Rosa Tennell and Jeremy Tennell. Streaming to you recorded from Seattle, Washington. Here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Plowline podcast with myself, Jeremy Tennell, and my co-host, Dr. Jerry Rosa Tennell. And today we are talking with a client of ours in our consulting practice at Co3 Consulting. We are talking to Sherwood Community Services and the leadership staff within Sherwood. And Co3 has been contracted to work with Sherwood Community Services with their IDEA committee and with the entire organization. And IDEA stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Action. And they've made great progress and great strides in the past year with their IDEA committee and are hoping to take it to a next level. And today we're going to have a conversation about what that looks like and about what Co3 brings into the organization and about what Sherwood's going to be bringing into this practice and how we're going to go about trying to build a deeper, more heart-focused perspective around the concepts of inclusion, diversity, equity, and action. Dr. G, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Aloha, everyone. I just wanted to welcome you all here, and I'm excited to see where this conversation is going to go. I know whenever it comes, when it comes to inclusion, diversity, equity, and action, sometimes those conversations can get convoluted. They're very, very complex. And in order for us to move forward, we've got to be able to talk to each other. And so I'm hoping that in this conversation, we'll be able to model on what that's going to look like, utilizing the guiding principles of Aloha, and how do we move forward? So yeah, pretty excited. Thanks for being here.
So let me introduce our guest today. We've got Lance Morehouse, who is the CEO of Sherwood Community Services, and we have Kara Cohn and Hannah Meyer, who are the leads with the IDEA committee, the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Action Committee. And I'd like each of you to take an opportunity just to kind of introduce yourselves and how you're coming into this space. If it's all right, could we'll start with, I'm just going to go with my screen. We'll start with Hannah, Kara, and Lance.
Sure. My name's Hannah Meyer. I am a speech therapist or speech language pathologist with Sherwood and one of the co-chairs of the IDEAS committee. My pronouns are she or they. I always love starting with pronouns. I'm trying to normalize that for everybody. And trying to think what else is important. I always struggle with introducing myself. I'm like, just have a conversation. We'll see how it goes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Kara?
I'm Kara Cohn, and I'm the program manager for the CCC program, which we're working to provide meaning and value and connection for folks who experience any kind of disability out in San Juan County. And when I first came to Sherwood, I immediately wanted to join the DEI committee. I'm a minority in this agency and in the world. I'm a Jew.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to have some voices that are clear as a bell right now. And I am here on behalf of my passion, which is the disabled community. And I would like to have my voice heard around where is the aloha? We need it. And we desperately want it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lance?
I'm Lance Morehouse. I'm the CEO of Sherwood Community Services. Been here about 10 and a half years now. And what brings me to this work is personal experience having a son that had significant disabilities. So that's why the work around that Sherwood does and around all people with disabilities to be included in their communities comes from. And as far as the diversity work that we're doing as an organization, I feel that's very important. It's really hard to separate the work that we do on behalf of people with disabilities from the work that we should be doing for all people to be included in their communities. So that's why this is very important to me.
Awesome. I love that. Lance, can you give us a little background on Sherwood and I mean it's an extensive organization in Northwest Washington and you know, so could you give us a little bit of background on maybe the services you provide as well as the areas you're reaching?
Sure. So Sherwood was established in 1957 by a group of families who had sons and daughters with intellectual and developmental disabilities who weren't included in public schools. So I always start there because it's the basis for our existence, right? And these families and their sons and daughters lived very isolated lives because they weren't part of the community of children that were going to school. And so they pulled a little bit of money and hired a teacher to prove that children with intellectual and developmental disabilities could learn. So from there, we started an educational program because once this group of families started this program, other families in the county, Snohomish County, heard about it and said, hey, how can we do that? So I think at one time there were 3 or 4 different programs going on in Snohomish County wherever they could find free or low cost space. And it was really focused on an educational focus for children with disabilities. So in 1972 in our state, we passed the Education for All law, and in 1974, the federal IDEA law that set up special ed programs as we know them today in our public schools. So at that time, our founder, Hazel Venables, decided that we didn't want to duplicate what the school districts were providing. And so we started an early supports program for infants and toddlers, birth to 3, who might be behind in their developmental milestones or have disabilities that needed some additional assistance during those early years of brain development. So we've got therapists and educators and family resource coordinators that go out into the community to wherever that child's natural environment is to provide life-changing therapies and services for infants and toddlers birth to 3. On the other end of the spectrum, so that program ends by definition at age 3, and students that have not yet reached their developmental milestones or outcomes go then into the public school system for up to 18 years if they continue in special education. So the other part of Sherwood then is we're there on the other end of that public school system for adults, young adults, when they transition out of school and they want to either work, have a job, or become more involved in their community. We're there with our Career and Community Connections program to help them get connected to their communities and contribute through employment if that is their goal. So what I like to say is we're like the bookends to the public school system. Work with the children early on, and then when they come out, transition in the other end. And just a quick story that's really meaningful, shows the work and the difference that we make. There was a family that came in just last week that I was able to talk to, who received early supports from us many, many years ago. And her daughter had now graduated from high school and came back to Sherwood for those employment and community inclusion supports. I've heard 3 or 4 stories like that over my time here, but it's always very meaningful. And they asked if those therapists that worked with their daughter many years ago were still with us.
That's fantastic. Kara, can you give us an idea of the program that you're running and how it's working on those goals?
So out here, it's a very rural area. We're nothing like Snohomish or nothing like King County, anything. So we've got a population of about 5,000 people year round.
Mhm.
It swells in the summer with tourists, but for the most part, it's a very small community. And as such, we need things that are very different. And so what we've done is we've partnered with the county and the school districts, and we go in and we teach classes for job readiness, get kids thinking about their journey. What is it that they really, really find meaningful in their lives? And then we try to find things in our local area that hit some of those marks. So
Mm.
we're matching value, ideas, and aspirations with those tasks. And then we do something called supported employment, if that's the goal, if employment is the goal. And we go into businesses, we learn about those businesses, we match people with them, and then we go to work with them. And we stay at work with them until everybody involved is confident, clear, and the quality of their work is, right where it should be. And folks are finding that it's incredibly valuable. Everybody on our caseload has a job.
That's amazing. That's great.
Yeah, it's very rewarding.
Yeah. Hannah, you're a speech therapist with Sherwood. Can you tell or relay a story, or maybe convey that feeling that perhaps you've witnessed, where the work you're doing is drawing somebody out from this possible isolation that they're in, and
Oh, yes.
into this into this world of where they're far more included than they were, where they're a part of something.
Absolutely. I can think of so many stories. It's hard to just pick one. The way I approach my work is I have the idea that communication is a human right. And my client is not just the child in front of me, it's their whole family unit. So my goal is to get them connected with other families who maybe are accessing similar supports or who have similar interests. And just kind of make sure they're connected in the community. However they're going to communicate, I help guide the family through figuring out what is going to work for that child. Most families start out wanting verbal communication, but we've been doing a lot of work lately around, it's called AAC, Augmentative Alternative Communication. So it could be using an iPad to communicate for the child, or lower tech options include pointing at pictures on a sheet of paper, or pushing a button that has a recorded message. And I got a good story from a family last week that I gave just one voice output button, and we were working just on, I think it was more or again, and the button was recordable. And the OT came in a couple days later, and apparently the child was using that button in the therapy session with OT to request more of a fun game that they were playing.
Oh, wow.
So cool. I can't wait to get in there and get them more buttons so that they can do a lot more communication.
That's so
It's
cool.
so fun to watch. I had another client years ago. We were using a low tech system called Pod. And it's so neat. It's this very thick book of pictures, and you kind of go through almost like a choose your own adventure book. So like if you touch this picture, it takes you to page number 32 or something. And I had the child using it at school, and then sent the book home with them. And the first thing the child did at home was go to the page that said, "I love you," to tell their parents.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that one immediately made me cry. I was like, okay, yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. A lot of what we do at Sherwood is caregiver coaching too. So we're showing the tips and tricks and strategies to the family so that they can carry through all of the strategies. And it's so fun to watch parents go from this almost like grief stage of, oh, my child has a delay or a disability, to this pride in who their child is and how they communicate and how they're learning. it's so wonderful. A lot of what I do now is focused on neuroaffirming care. So instead of viewing like autism as a disability, we view it as simply a difference, just the brain is wired differently.
Yes.
And it's been so much fun watching families go from this resistance to the word autism, it's this big scary word, to I had this one family who was really scared of autism, and then we had this big conversation, and the next time I walked in the house, mom and grandma were both wearing neurodiversity is natural t-shirts, and they had a little
Awesome.
magnet for me to stick on my car and everything. It was so cute.
That's great.
I love it so much. Such a great family.
How hidden do you think that this population is in our broader society? Like how easy is it for the broader society to just not pay attention?
I think my perception is pretty skewed because I encounter autism in particular pretty much daily. I think that autistic people are everywhere, and as a society, we are starting to recognize it more and more. I myself am pretty sure that I'm autistic. Once you kind of know what to look for, you're like, there you are. Your brain works the same way as mine.
Yeah.
I've almost gotten to the point where I think it's 50-50 neurodiverse and the neurotypical, or you'll hear the word holistic. It's really fun, I think, to kind of find your people out in the wild, I guess.
Sure, totally. Yeah. Lance, same question. What, like how, how hidden is this population to the broader culture? And what are the impacts of that? Not just on this particular community, but on the broader culture.
Because I have this gray hair, I know the longer history in the United States, and specifically Washington State, about how we used to treat people with disabilities as we built institutions out of the public eye, and professional recommendations were to families who maybe just gave birth to their son or daughter in the hospital that they needed to send them away to this institution where they could receive specialized care. So while not perfect today, we have come a long way from those days.
Yeah.
What I see as far as people being hidden from society is more about the stereotypes that people have around people with disabilities. In 72 or 74, like I said earlier, when special ed programs were started, I think that was one of the biggest steps to integrating kids earlier in their life with kids that didn't have disabilities in public schools. Now, in the beginning, they were in the boiler room or the portable out back, and it wasn't an inclusive environment. But today, most of the people that are adults that have maybe some of these stereotypes, or better yet, openness to the abilities of people, have gone to school with someone that may have experienced a disability. And even though special education, even today, isn't perfect, I think that was a huge door that opened. So I think most of the people that have disabilities today are receiving services in their communities, not in segregated settings that are away from the public eye. But the stereotypes still remain that people need to be taken care of, and they're not seen as fully contributing citizens.
Yeah.
So that's what I see.
Yeah. Yeah, Kara, it sounds like maybe with your community, you can talk a little bit about employment and job experience and how powerful and pivotal that is, moving out of an education standpoint and being a part of a community. I can think of the young woman who works at the QFC down the street from us, and she's very much a part. And we all see each other in that grocery store. We all shop at that grocery store, and she's very much a part of this community, and an important part of it. How does employment shift that? Can you talk to that about that?
So the other is always demonized. We cannot seem to get away from that, even as adults, right? We're doing it with trans folks right now. It depends on the decade, and we're picking on somebody, right?
Yeah.
So that whole of the other, we try so hard to neutralize that, but we only see what we're willing to see, and we're only willing to do what we're willing to do.
Yes.
However, a program like ours allows individuals to stop feeling disconnected and isolated. And it allows people to see a variety of different folks with a variety of different ways to approach the world, right?
Mhm.
And in doing so, the interactions build on each other, right? And over time, and you can see it in a very small community like mine, because everybody is out and about now.
Yeah.
So if you can even imagine, out here, we have no NO, capital NO, public transportation.
Yeah.
So
That's got to be tough.
the isolation that our folks experience is real.
Sure.
And COVID only, just put huge, huge underlines under it and then
Yeah.
bolded it.
Right.
And so our work really is about integration, inclusion, and it's a marvel, and it's visible in these really small numbers. So it's very exciting.
I love that. I love that answer. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Uh so Kara's brought in this concept of the other, and how it is it just seems to be something that is constantly with us, right? As human beings. Like, we're always there's always an othering. There's always something outside of the normative. Um, what are your thoughts? What is that? Where's that coming from? Why, as human beings, do you think we want to other? Who wants to take it?
It's interesting because I feel like that is a direct response to, as humans, we don't want to view ourselves as not being unique. And it, we almost reject our similarities, I feel like. And we're just not super unique as humans.
No.
Our ideas, our thoughts, our feelings, our dreams, they're all the same.
Yes.
And people just don't want to acknowledge that. It's so interesting. And if you're othering another group, you can focus on the differences rather than the similarities. I don't know what it is about similarities, but people are just so uncomfortable with seeing how similar we are.
Yeah. Yeah. What
Fascinating.
an awesome point, Hannah. I think about, my gray hair informs me on this one. I think about tattoos, right? When I was young, and tattoos were taboo. And here we are, many years later, and and people started getting tattoos in order to set themselves apart, and now everybody's got tattoos.
Yep, I have lots of tattoos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else want to take that question? What is it about this othering that's within us?
I'll share a little bit. When I think about it in the history, when we built those institutions, society did not want to see that population, right?
Yeah.
So they guised this with specialized services, and you'll receive what you need if you go to this place, right? And
Yeah.
none of them were built in metropolitan areas that were visible. They were all built out in the woods, away from society. So, not just other, and I'm sitting here thinking about pronouns in a different way, because I have always shied away from even pronouns about they or them, because when you use those pronouns, you are separating whatever population you're talking about from the general public or general society. And anytime that we build like a senior complex, let me use that as an example, for seniors to live in. Society's perception when they go by that building is that's where the old people live. Anytime we build a prison, society's perception is that's where the bad people are. And when we started services for people with disabilities, we built places for people to go. And that's where the people with disabilities go. So I think we did the othering ourselves to a large extent, at least in the disability community and many other populations in the United States, by building places, not thinking inclusive about how every individual could live within their communities.
Can I add on to that?
I love that answer. Please, yeah.
So I think the difference with pronouns versus, so pronouns are self-chosen. So you're self-labeling versus, like the assisted living facilities, that's something that someone else is putting on you. That's the difference. As someone who does use they, them, what I like about it is it makes me feel seen. For me, when someone says she or he, I'm like, oh, that doesn't quite feel like me. I'm already othered by that. I'm outside of this. But then when somebody says they or them, for me, it's like, oh, you see me, you get me, you understand, like this is a safe space. Does that kind of make sense?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that you're a person who, struggles with pronouns by any means, Lance, but that's just kind of what it feels like for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Jerry and I have a concept for this, we call it the colonized mind. And it's this concept. And we use that because very much colonized society can be synonymous to white supremacy society. It's just that when we use the word colonized society, it's not only inclusive of these concepts of white supremacy, but it's also inclusiveness of othering, it's inclusiveness of patriarchy, it's inclusiveness, right, of these power dynamics that were constructed and indoctrinated into us. And ongoingly indoctrinated into us. And in fact, so much of the dissonance that we feel in society today is this colonized system that is no longer meeting the needs of society. And so society is like, no, there's got to be something else. This isn't working. And so please, yeah.
That too.
Yeah.
I think that so much of that is wrapped up in capitalism too.
Yes.
And that it's this take, me. What can I get from the world? What can I take resource wise so that someone else can't have it? And that in itself is wrapped up. And I don't think that we can separate this colonized mindset, racism, white supremacy from capitalism until we start sharing resources. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And I would actually expand on that in the concept that that capitalism, socialism, communism, and any of these other isms are all colonized systems. And they're colonized systems that are based off of have and have not. And so this work, one of the things, it's a funny thing, right? This work cannot necessarily be about how do we eliminate suffering? How do we eliminate, how do we eliminate have and have not? How do we, right? Because the reality is the human condition is, the human experience, it is difficult. It is difficult, and it's going to continue to be difficult. But it does have to be about how can we understand this better? How can we change this? What power do we have as individuals to change this? And how do we build awareness to alleviate suffering?
How do we reduce it? How do we prevent further harm?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I think the first thing the healing is to acknowledge. We cannot heal what's not acknowledged. And so It's like acknowledging that there are systems that are put into place that will benefit one individual over the other, right? There's also systems in place that will continuously other people and demonize them in the process, kind of like what Kara was saying. And whenever there is an other, there is a demonization. And it's like we can look at colonization as that demonization, right? It's like take away the language, demonize the language. The language is not good enough. Speak this language. Take away the gods. That God is not a god. You need to go ahead and be part of this religion. All of these things are demonizing to create the other. Systems being put into place where it's anyone who is not of European descent is demonized. We can see that in today's even today as well too. And so it's like, talking about these things, and Kara, you're right, integration and inclusion, but what does inclusion mean? What does inclusion mean? Does inclusion mean that it's only people that look like you, think like you, are like you? If someone comes into the conversation that is against everything that you believe in, how do you remain in a place of aloha? Because aloha is not about just being kind to each other, right? So what does inclusion mean?
So Jerry, couldn't we just look at Hawaii?
Yeah.
As an example?
Yep.
Once we came in there, we took away everything. We demonized your language, your gods, your everything. And we turned everything upside down. And now it's this huge tourist attraction. And all of the beauty and all of the ritual and the spirituality is seeping away. And that is what we do everywhere we show up.
There's a, yes, and we can take a look at Hawaii, and there's even a deeper layer to that as well too. Now, if we look at Hawaii as like the missionaries came in or the Europeans came in and took things away, we have to examine that. We have to interrogate that. Is that what really happened? Or, and this is difficult to say, did our king give up our indigeneity? So then that way he was able to build everything based off of the British Empire. So those are things that are very, very, very complex, because you do have Kanaka Maoli, you do have indigenous Hawaiian people that are still practicing their practices. It hasn't gone away. Maybe, and it's like right now there is a resurgence of that. People are beginning to step back into their language, right? They're beginning to step back into the things that make them who they are. And so colonization is so complex. When I think about Hawaii, and it's like, oh yeah, this is what happened, right? It's like people came in and took that from us. That leaves the indigenous people in a place where it's like they were conquered over and there were not warriors. They were warriors, right? They knew exactly what was happening. But when you have a king that is like, hey, I'm going to go to Europe, I'm going to build myself a palace, and I'm going to build everything off of this British Empire. My people need to speak the language of the foreigner. Then it gets so complicated. So, yeah.
Well, and Hawaii speaks to the complication of global colonization by Europeans, period. Right? Like that colonization took hundreds of years. It affected indigenous people in dramatic ways. 90% of the indigenous populations around the globe died in the course of about 400 years from disease. Indigenous populations went from well into the 80 percentile of the global population to today 6% of the global population. And so, and our ancestors were once indigenous, and that indigeneity was colonized and taken from them. And it doesn't matter what descent you're from, that story is true. And so the question becomes, what is this colonized reality that we live in? And what did we leave behind, or what was taken from us with indigenous paradigms? One was interconnection, the other one is disconnection. And so as we're talking about this concepts of othering, as we're talking about this concepts of inclusion, no matter what group we're talking about, what we're really talking about is we're trying to move, we're trying to cure and heal this disconnection, and we're trying to reach back to this interconnection. And that's very difficult to do. It's very difficult to do because everything around us pushes towards the colonized paradigm. So here we are. We're Co3 and Sherwood are working together in order to deepen this process, in order to deepen this this experience. And one of the things that we've brought to the three of you is the idea that you can do this corporately and you can do this collectively, but through policy and procedure, but it won't really change much because that's not systems change. That is technical fixes. So if we're going to do this, we need to invite people into doing the work individually. Would you, whoever wants to go first, would you talk about what that process is, what we've talked about, and what we're hoping to achieve through individual practice and change, transformation?
So one aspect of what that means to me is inviting people to really self-reflect, to note when they get defensive, to note what their assumptions are, to note when they want to kind of exit a conversation or get out of a situation, or what their role is. And we've seen some of that already with some of the pushback that we first got from the all-staff meeting.
Which is normal.
Yeah, totally. But I kind of want to encourage people to be excited about the discomfort, because it means that you're doing something new, you're doing something different, it's unfamiliar. That's where the learning really happens. And I think I'm struggling with showing people how to embrace that currently. Hopefully that some of this conversation will help people see that a little bit, like, okay, I'm uncomfortable. That's okay. Let me just sit for a second and see what part it is that makes me feel uncomfortable. And
there, and that's a tool. That's a tool. Self-reflection. Start here. Ask yourself this. Hold on. Don't get distracted. Stay with it. And it's also about, checking in with yourself and saying, hey, wait a minute. I know I've got this comment and I'm dying to say it, but I need to control myself.
Is that an inside thought?
Wow.
Right.
I think through what I'm about to say, because I'm not going to be able to take it back. Once those words are out, they're like the little feathers of a pillow. And once the wind takes them, they're gone.
Yes.
That's the importance of the pause, right, Kara? Is that when you, between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space, you have the opportunity to think about what you're about to say. And also be able, that self-reflection, to be able to check in and ask yourself in that moment, how is my bias showing up in these thoughts right now?
Because we all have it.
Because we all have it. And so, yeah, self-reflection is, and also things can happen so quick. It can happen so quick. And it's like when we find ourselves being activated so quickly because of what somebody says or what they did, I think that's also an opportunity to ask, why did it hurt so much?
Mm.
Because when it hurts so much, that means there's something that is unhealed in that. And so being able to also lean into that as well. But so easily and so often we can just spew things out that we can't take back. And
So true.
that's, yeah, it is. It's difficult. And how do you have conversations, right? You're talking about idea, right? Inclusion, diversity, equity, action. How do you have conversations about the most complex things that we're talking about right now, which is race and racism and white supremacy? It's like,
And
how do you
othering.
have an othering? How do we start?
And with the backdrop, you guys, the backdrop of the former president of the United States incapable of self-reflection or self-control. The damage and the comments and the hurt is extraordinary. And half of our
Yeah.
country is lining up with that.
And I think
Yeah.
Can we just
have to
breathe for a
acknowledge
moment after
Yeah.
that, Kara? It's like,
Yeah.
let's just breathe for a moment.
I think too, it's important to acknowledge everybody doesn't want to get political, but it's a major election year, and a large portion of our population is feeling unsafe. I mean, realistically, if Trump does get elected again, my family is probably going to have to leave the US. And
Where are you
it's-
going?
I don't know. That's the thing. Trans rights are the #1 issue for our family, especially having a trans child. I don't know. I've been looking into different places. Basically, there's nowhere we could go that we wouldn't be really scraping by financially. We've looked at Canada. There's certain areas of Canada that are safer, but there's not a lot of options, especially for
You
trans.
know,
Yeah.
if I can just add in and bring
Please.
back self-reflection a little bit. No one should have to make that choice, Hannah. I just,
But
that hurts to the core. I know it's the
Yeah.
reality.
yeah,
But the self-reflection and your guys' individualized approach that we need to invite people into this conversation, I think is very important. You've said it, Jeremy. We can make policies, we can legislate, and that's the realm that I've worked in around disability rights for many, many years. So I understand the process, but people will still feel like this is being done to them and not buying into, with an open mind,
Yes.
why this is important. And the only way to get that is through each of us going through our individual journeys.
such a good point.
So I appreciate the focus on the individual, and then what can come from that can be true change.
I think
Yeah.
one thing I'm really proud of at Sherwood is that a majority of our staff members identify as having some sort of disability, whether that's mental health or physical disability. And I think that gives a lot of us an ability to go, oh, okay, I can see how this would make me feel or how this would impact me. So it gives us a lot of empathy for others,
Mhm.
which I think will help in this process. It's not perfect, but it's a step.
Yeah. I want to point out, and I think the exchange we just had will help exemplify this. So much of our dialogue and our outward experience and our outward paradigm construction is voiced in the collective, right? Whether we're watching cable news or we're watching Instagram or we're watching TikTok or if we're bringing in these other voices, right? and especially with the way, you know, the algorithm is designed, I can scroll for hours and hear voice after voice after voice after voice after voice. The collective is obviously going to activate action. It's going to activate from a collective perspective, which is, you know, from a collective perspective, we need to change this. We need to do this. We need to. Okay, great. Yes. And pause, because your existence exists right here. And what we're doing is we're having this heavy dose of systems of collective, right? And we're not taking the time to cultivate this this dialogue with self, right? You know, the inner dialogue within our head, getting that out of our head, journaling, calming our autonomic nervous system, breathing, and then having, in smaller chunks, a conversation with the collective. So what a wonderful collective Sherwood is, right? Here's an individual of like-minded individuals that have like passions, that are working for a similar goal. What a perfect place in order to, once you are checking in with yourself, engage in conversations that are not drawing down the collective, right? Like, well, we need to do this, but drawing out from the individual to the individual. That feedback loop is a powerful feedback loop that we do not in our current society cultivate. And to ask, to listen, to observe, to remain heart focused, and to adapt and to acknowledge.
I think it's hard, you know, I mean, it is. It's really difficult to be able to start engaging in these practices to where, you know, we're self-reflecting and we're self-aware and we're self-regulating. In fact, I had to get me a coach because it's like here I am doing this work and I know how difficult it is. And so it's like, you know, I do a lot of self-reflective practices, but she uses this metaphor of this red ball. Her name's Diana David. And she uses a metaphor of this red ball. And the red ball is like yourself, right? It's like it's you're navigating, you're figuring yourself out. But the only way that you can grow is to be in relationship with others. And so when you're in a relationship with others and all of a sudden it's like you have these two balls, mirror balls, she calls it, and it's like you rubbing up against each other. And sometimes you'll see things in the other person that you may not like. And basically it's like that's time for you to reflect. And it's like, wait a minute, if this person is a reflection of me and I don't like what I'm seeing, what is it that I need to look at? And as you grow, you know, sometimes it's like as you're adding friction, there's also energy that is involved, where there will be individuals that you'll come across where it's like, huh, your energy just don't jive with me. And that is okay as well, too. But I feel that in our society, with everything that we have with Instagram and social media, it is so important to be liked. It's the amount of likes that you have that's going to make it important when it's like, it's okay. We can work together. We can exist in the same space, but we don't have to really hang out. Just respect each other. And I think those are some of the words that came up, right? Is respect and to integrate, to include, to love. And as we are able to see that, and then we start, you know, being around each other, we start to shine with each other as well, too. We can shine around all of these things. And sometimes I feel that that's the only way that we could be in relationship with all the work that Sherwood is doing. You know, I feel that um, this whole thing about being invisible, you know, Lance, you were talking about how, you know, bringing people into the light because they're they're the other. We're gonna go ahead and separate you into the other. I remember working with a child where the mom just wanted her child to just be with other children. But that child has special needs. I don't I don't have time for someone with special needs. So they isolate the child. And it's like Hannah, you're talking about how the brain just thinks differently. I think it's absolutely beautiful when you can think differently than what everybody else tells you to, right? It's like just having this array of diversity and being able to actually acknowledge that and to be able to bring things into the light. I mean, I feel that is that's that's the aloha.
I think that's something that we can actually learn from kids on too, especially young kids. They don't really see differences in the way that we adults do, and it's absolutely magical to watch kids interact with others who are seemingly different from them. I've seen my daughter have play dates with nonverbal autistic kids, and oh, well, she was telling me that she wanted to do this because she pointed this way and pulled me this way, and it's just matter of fact for kids. And even with my daughter transitioning, watching other 5 and 6-year-olds figure out, oh yeah, she's just a girl inside. Okay, no big deal. And how they just move right along, like no big deal. I think that as adults, we really should look at kids more and just see how kids interact and go, you know what? That's how I want to be. That's how I'm going to act. That's why I work with kids.
That's awesome.
They're just so amazing.
Yeah, the inclusive nature too, and not to sound cliche, but we are all on the spectrum
Oh,
at some
Yeah.
level. I mean, take autism out of it. There's a spectrum of people, and we're all on that spectrum, right?
Yeah.
We're all individuals. We all have characteristics that are both positive and probably not so positive. And there are studies that show diverse workplaces are more productive. Diverse communities are more powerful when everybody cares about everyone in that community, no matter their color, preference, race, differences. Communities are stronger. And
Yes.
not to sum up, what we're trying to do with you guys as our consultants is how can we as Sherwood, as an organization in one little spot, our community, portray that inclusion and welcoming, both within the organization and with our involvement in the larger community as well.
Yes.
Creating that space for diversity to actually be welcomed, right?
Yes.
And then also just making this the normal. It feels like a lot of times there is this imaginary ideal of like some sort of straight cis white man and everything else is a difference, or like there's like this normal that is like this one tiny little dot and everybody else is outside of the realm of normal. Like, actually, no, all of this is normal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeremy and I were
I
talking about that.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we were talking about that on just this multiple ways of understanding and seeing the world. I mean, we have one sun. We can be all looking at the same sun from different perspectives, and we're all going to see something different. And to say that you're wrong and I'm right, it's like, are you serious? We're just looking at things from different ways through a different lens and understanding that.
So true.
Yeah. Yeah. We often talk about big T truths and little T truths, and little T truths are these things that inform our individual perspectives, and even our individual paradigms. And so if we were to take a congregation within a church, for instance, here's a body of people who profess to believe the same thing. And but if we interviewed each and every one of them about the three tenets of that faith, each and every one of them would have a diverse answer on those three tenets of that faith. And so even though they collectively believe in a big T truth, it is their little T truths that are informing them. And so we got to constantly be it's building that awareness of, oh, okay, what am I referring to here? Am I referring to my big T truth here? Or is there a little T truth that's informing it? And it's probably a little T truth, because that's the reality. And there are, big T truths are kind of fundamental. The sun is going to rise. That's a big T truth. The moon works on a 28-day cycle. That's a big T truth. Nature is in a constant cycle. That's a big T truth. So cultivating these awarenesses is very important. Before we wrap up, I just want to give the three of you an opportunity to kind of wrap up your thoughts about the work we're doing, and then we're going to invite folks to a series of things that they can get involved in.
So I think we're looking to entice, we're looking to inform, and we're looking to share. And what we want to do is create a fad or a trend that says diversity and inclusion is the cool way. Come with us. We've got some ideas and we've got some plans, and we want you to be a part of it, because
you're included in it.
Exactly. And what you have to share is valuable, and we want to hear from you.
Yes.
I'll share that the reason we engaged with you is because the committee has done some good work over the last 6 years, and felt like we were at a place where we didn't know what the next step was. And I hope that I'm speaking for the committee being a part of it. And inviting people into the conversation, I think, is very, very important. If we see that the individual journey of everyone here at Sherwood is important, and inviting them to really think about that. I reflect back on myself, moving from North Idaho and Spokane to downtown, a job in downtown Seattle, and seeing the difference in diversity that I never experienced before that. And then coming to Sherwood with at least a basic knowledge of, oh my God, this is much different than what I've learned in my life. And seeing the institutionalized racism that does exist in our society. And whether people react strongly to that word or not, I would say it's in that alignment with big T truths, right? You can not acknowledge that it exists. You can get defensive around that. But if you have an open mind and you try to reflect back on what at least myself was taught in my school life, in my small town North Idaho life, compared to the world today, there's a lot to be questioned. And it doesn't, honestly, in my mind, there are rights and wrongs that I feel morally, internally. But there is also another perspective that is very based in big T truths that has happened in the development of our society. So what I hope is we expand the conversations that we've had within the IDEA committee to the greater staff at Sherwood, and invite every individual to come into this conversation at whatever level that they're at in their own individual learning. And I do want to put a plug in for the committee to join the committee, because I think we've had some very great conversations and made some recommendations that has started to shape Sherwood as a more inclusive and equitable organization. And wouldn't it be great to be a part of that? Not that every individual in this organization doesn't have a voice in where we go from here. But the committee is a good place to start and be a part of those conversations.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well said, Lance. I don't think I have any real wrap up to my thoughts. Overall, I just feel really proud of Sherwood as an organization because we have so many people who are really willing to put in the work and to kind of help others to get to the point where they're willing to put in the work. And I just think the vast majority of people at Sherwood are coming from a place of connection and caring and love. And it's just an incredible environment to be in. I feel so fortunate.
I love that. Those are great. It's so important that that people at Sherwood understand that their ideas matter, that their little T truths matter, and that we invite everyone to increase their understanding, their knowledge, just their basic comfort level with big T truths. And the only person that can that can go through that journey is you. You have to choose to go through that journey, and that doesn't mean that that your worldview must change. Nobody is saying your worldview must change. However, the reality is that worldviews change when you change. And you change when you do the work of change. And that comes through self-reflection, self-awareness, and self-regulation. And to not change is to stand still in the midst of the current of a river that will sweep you away. And that can be very painful. So we invite everyone to these conversations, to join into these conversations through the practices. We have several opportunities that each of you are invited to, and you'll find the link for them in the description of this podcast. So those are, for the Sherwood community, that is the IDEA Committee. You can reach out to Hannah, and she can get you involved in the committee. We're planning on doing a retreat here sometime in the spring, and that will give us an opportunity in order to go deeper. The second is our Conversation Club. Meets every Thursday, meets from 6 to 8:30. It's a 90-minute meeting. And it's a series of media that we're providing, including audiobooks, books, television shows, and you're welcome to engage in conversations and going through this material as we do. And then the third is the Power of Haw Community of Practice. We meet every Monday morning at 9 a.m. for about a 15-minute. It has been going about 30 minutes just because people want to share, but it's a 15-minute practice. There's some videos in order to orient yourself around the basic practice. It's extraordinarily simple. You already know how to do it because it's breath. And the incredible realization that we hope everyone will come away with is that you have the power in order to engage your autonomic nervous system when you're engaged with difficult situations or stressful conversations. And instead of engaging with fight, flight, or freeze, you can come back into yourself and you can move through those difficulties. And it works with more than just conversations. It works with life. So those are the three invitations, and we would value you to be there and love to have you. Jerry?
I just wanted to welcome everyone. It's open. It's also it's asking people to be courageous in this space. These conversations that we're going to have, we're asking people to stay engaged, and most importantly, to experience the discomfort. Discomfort, when we feel things that are uncomfortable, that's when we know that change is happening. That's where change happens. It doesn't happen in a stagnation of being comfortable where we are right now. So we invite everyone to be in this space with us, and it's going to take all of us to be able to eliminate or even dismantle any kind of oppressive systems that we're currently a part of. But it's a welcoming place. We're open, we're adaptable, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here and for being
Thank-
open.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
All
it's been
right.
one.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you everyone for listening in on this conversation. And we hope that it's been impactful for you. If you're interested in these kind of conversations and this kind of work, you can get more information at Linktree / Co3 Consulting. That's the best place to probably find all of our links. So it's Linktree / Co3 3 Consulting. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Have a good day.
You too.